Teresa, one of my greatest pleasures, greatest joys, is actually thinking about the points in these meditations and then having a conversation with you.
I'm actually very lucky that it keeps me much more focused because it lights a bit of a fire under me where even if I'm reflecting on, if I'm normally praying, I'm often reflecting on just trivial things either in my own life or whatever problems I'm currently facing, and it's good to bring those to God. But I have my own prayer time for that as well, and it's really good to actually force myself to fully engage in these meditations so that I obviously have something to bring to the table when we're finished. And it reminds me of in middle school, I really appreciated one teacher who, after daily mass, she would ask us about the homily at some point after mass throughout the day. Because then, for the first time as a kid, I was like, I've got to pay attention to that thing. I don't know if it was as late as middle school, but it was a turning point. It's actually very helpful, and I think that's why I liked the point you made about having friends to discuss
Yeah.
meditations with afterwards, because taking in content and then discussing it with others is one of my favorite things on earth. I, for instance, even very simply, last night I got to watch a movie with a friend that's one of her favorite movies, and I hadn't seen it. And it was so delightful that she shared it with me, but also that we got to talk about it and that I got to experience it through the lens that she wanted me to, almost with a guide. It's so much more delightful that way because it teaches us more about the content itself. It teaches us about that friend. It teaches us about ourselves. And as I was reflecting on this meditation, I was asking myself, what moments or what experiences with content brought me the most happiness? And it's always the content, the most lasting happiness comes from the content that really, really teaches me about myself and the world and brings me a different understanding. As much as I go on and on and on about French and Russian writers, I think the English writers actually do this the best, where you're reading a book and you're just astounded that you're like, I didn't know that I'm absolutely like that. Or, oh, I have friends that are just like this. They just capture it so beautifully. And I think it's a kind of delight that really lasts because you can rest in it and actually know people better by the content that you're taking in.
Yeah, it's so fantastic when we get that insight, that aha,
Mm-hmm.
and we get so much more. I get so much more of it with through my conversation with you. I mean, obviously, there's some insight that resulted in producing these rosary
Mm-hmm.
meditations. But I get much greater insight when then we talk and I get to receive from you. Now I'm not just limited to my
Mm-hmm.
insight, I get your insight. And now I have greater insight.
it it also reminds me, I'm often referencing too many things in my own life, but I'm currently reading Dracula, and one of my favorite things is that all the characters, well, first I should state that the whole book is written as letters or in some other form. It's all in first person of, oh, I'm writing a letter to so and so about this experience that I just had of a vampire or so and so. But because of that, all of the content is diegetic, as in it's actually you're reading what the characters themselves are writing. So whenever they need to share information, they all have to share the information with each other. And there are many points in the book where everyone's just like sitting down, hey, here's all of my entire journal, you sit down and read that, and then I'm going to sit down and I'm going to read all your journals, and can you type that up for me because I need all of your information. And they're just constantly in this really beautiful state of sharing information with each other, which is a very rare thing, because if you've ever watched many horror movies or thrillers, usually the biggest frustration on earth is that no one communicates.
And that's why they get killed.
They always get killed because they're like, oh, I didn't mention, I saw the hook guy right outside, you guys didn't see that. They're never communicating well, and they're keeping it to themselves. But in Dracula they handle it very, very well because they all sit down and share almost these big dossiers of everything they've learned all the time. And multiple times characters will meet each other for the first time and be like, oh, I've read all of your writings on this. I
Yeah.
feel as if I know you.
Yeah.
And they instantly grow into this really beautiful friendship because they're like, oh, I've read this and therefore I know you. I know you. I truly, like, I understand you. And the character in turn is like, I feel so well received because you know me that well. And that's how I feel when we sit down and have these conversations, like we're pulling together a great mystery.
Yeah. Taking in truth and discussing it with friends is essential for friendship. It's partly what makes friendship. I have to admit, I feel a frustration and I feel like a total failure
Oh,
because one of the greatest pleasures is just this, what we've been talking about. And we have it between each other. We have it in our family. This is what I want for everybody. And I don't know how to get other people to do it.
that's a good question.
Because in the course of 7 days, we provide 35 different points of truth.
I never thought about it that way.
We provide a lot of content to think about and then discuss.
I think we should start sprinkling in just one lie in there, just to keep people on their toes, you know?
You didn't realize that I already do?
Uh-oh.
But there's a lot to be discussed. And I don't know why people don't just listen to the Rosary podcast or take the transcript, think about it, discuss it with a friend so that they can have the joy of friendship. But you don't have to be limited to the Rosary podcast. Like the things we were mentioning, to pick a book with somebody else and read it and talk about it.
Oh, yeah.
Because what I want is for people to delight in truth and delight in friendship.
I'm in the most fantastic book club right now that's ironically meant for young mothers, or mothers in general, I think, actually, but almost none of us are actually moms. And still, it has been one of the most delightful experiences to meet with mostly women that I don't know and discuss a book together once a month. Because I'm just truly astounded by people that otherwise I would have met and maybe had some passing small talk with. But instead, I'm hearing some of just like the most impactful reflections and insights from them that I would have never gleaned just in meeting them for any other purpose. But sharing in some kind of content is so important and so helpful.
And a lot of people, maybe they don't have time to read a book or they don't know what to read, but if they're already doing the podcast, they're already getting truth.
It's also a good way to share the podcast, to say, here, listen to this, I want to know your thoughts.
Yes. And then make a point to have lunch or have a coffee or have a beer and talk about it.
Yeah, yeah.
It's amazing how people light up if you say to them, I'd really like your thoughts on this.
It holds just a treasure trove of respect in just saying that. Because we want to be known, we want to be respected, we want to be listened to, we want to be seen. It's a very little question, but it's a really beautiful thing.
Yeah. Well, even if nobody else does it, I rejoice that I get to think about important truths and I get to discuss them with you so that I get more insight through you. Thank you.
I'm happy to be here.
Well, let's be apostles of friendship, good conversation, and the Rosary. Share this with others.